Okay, dear friends, good evening. How are you? Today, we have seen the some study material on Indian nationalism, part 3rd. But yet we have not finished the part 2, that is financial phase of colonialism. मैंने आपको आज part 3rd का study material भेजा है, मिल गया होगा, can I hope? And apart from that, but today we have to finish the financial phase, that is the last one phase in the part 2. Apart from that, my friends, it may be slightly confusing for you people. I have sent you some extra study material with the title Food for Thought. You may be a bit confused, what is the meaning of food for thought? Actually, this is not the question answer session. In fact, this is not the question in fact. Rather, you can say you people are supposed to think over the essential points. And yet the objective is to make you a thinking creature. मतलब मैंने आपको फूड फॉर थॉट की अध्ययन सामग्री भेजी है, वो क्वेश्चन राइटिंग नहीं है, या उसको आप क्वेश्चन राइटिंग की तरह यूज ना करें. यू हैव ट्राई टू थिंक ओवर देम सो दैट it will make you mentally alert and make you a thinking creature. मतलब आपको ये मानसिक रूप से सजग बनाएगा और आपको एक सोचने वाला प्राणी बनाएगा, इसलिए मैंने भेजा हुआ है. I am just giving you the example. I am coming in the last first. Yeah? Just 1 minute. Where is? Just 1 minute. Yes. This is financial phase of colonialism after 1858. Why this phase called the financial capitalist phase? What is meant by the financial capitalist phase? What new ways came into light for exploitation of the Indian economy during this period? मतलब here you have to raise a question, what is the meaning? Why is this phase called the financial phase? So you have to answer this. Suppose in order to make you slightly more perfect, you can do one thing. You can take a notebook, you can write a question, and briefly in some sentences, even you should try to answer the question. Yet the objective is not exactly this is the question answer session, but simply you can say it will make you more clear over the topic. मतलब आप वहां पर एक नोटबुक बना लें और इसमें जो टर्म है कि फाइनेंशियल कैपिटलिज्म क्या है, यानी वित्तीय पूंजीवाद क्या है, वित्तीय पूंजीवाद से क्या मतलब है, फाइनेंशियल फेज से व्हाट न्यू वेज केम इनटू लाइट फॉर एक्सप्लॉयटेशन ऑफ द इंडियन इकोनॉमी ड्यूरिंग दिस फेज. मैंने ऐसा हुआ इंडियन इकोनॉमी को इस समय इसने किस प्रकार से एक्सप्लॉयटेशन किया. Why did British capitalists consider India as better destination for investment than Britain during this period? मतलब why did British capitalists prefer to invest in India during this phase? What is the magnet for them? मतलब ब्रिटिश कैपिटलिस्ट ने भी इंडिया में क्यों इन्वेस्टमेंट करना चाहा, क्या ऐसा अट्रैक्शन था? You have to search the reply. Then why did Dada Bhai Nauroji consider British capital dangerous for India, and what suggestions did he make for it? What suggestions were made by Dada Bhai Nauroji? I am just asking the question. मतलब दादा भाई नौरोजी ने ऐसा क्या सुझाव दिया, उन्होंने ब्रिटिश कैपिटल को इंडिया के लिए डेंजरस क्यों माना, और सुझाव देने में कहा कि बेटर टू डेवलप द इरिगेशन प्रोजेक्ट इन प्लेस ऑफ रेलवेज. सेकेंडली कि here you have to Indianize the civil services examination. If you will Indianize the civil services examination, then we are no more in need to send the pensions to the retired British officers in London or in Britain. So that will save Indian money. So in this way कि हम अगर ब्रिटिश कैपिटलिस्ट को, रिटायर्ड ब्रिटिश कैपिटलिस्ट को पैसे ना भेजने हो, पेंशन ना भेजने हो, तो हम ज्यादा से ज्यादा इंडियंस को अपॉइंट करें, तो यही उनका सजेशन है. एनीवे, my point is, why did Dada Bhai Nauroji consider British capital dangerous for? In what ways was the rule of British Crown seem to be different from the rule of the British company in India? Here you have to find out in what way the rule of British Crown was going to be different from that of the British company in India. You will make this point clear. It was simply change in complexion, not the change in objective, simply change in behavior. ब्रिटिश क्राउन का जो रूल है और पहले जो ब्रिटिश कंपनी का रूल था उसके केवल व्यवहार में अंतर था, लेकिन उनका जो ऑब्जेक्टिव है उनमें कोई अंतर नहीं रहा. देयर वाज नो डिफरेंस बिटवीन द टू. व्हाट लेसन डिड द ब्रिटिश लर्न फ्रॉम द ग्रेट रिवोल्ट ऑफ 1857 इन द कंटेक्स्ट ऑफ इंडिया? अब व्हाट लेसन वाज लर्न बाय द ब्रिटिश, ब्रिटिश ने ऐसा क्या सबक सीखा 1857 के रिवोल्ट से? व्हाट लेसन वाज लर्न बाय द ब्रिटिश? यू पीपल हैव टू try to think over all these points. My students, I am just bringing you 5 questions as we have done earlier, and questions are very standard, but you people are brilliant and you are competent enough to answer my question. So please answer my question. I am waiting for the right choice. Arrange the following events in chronological order in ascending manner. 1. Introduction of competitive examination in civil services. Point 2, introduction of the portfolio system. Portfolio system, that is Viceroy introduced, what in Hindi that is called Sambhagiya system, Sambhagiya Vyavastha. And third, the Local Self-Government Act. My students, events are clear, incidents are clear, proposals are clear. The proposals have appeared in during different time, and you people are supposed to put them in chronological order in ascending manner. आपको इसमें फाइंड आउट करना है कि क्रोनोलॉजिकली कैसी असेंडिंग मैनर में जा रहा है. बी फास्ट. बी फास्ट माय फ्रेंड्स. C. Introduction of competitive examination in civil services. You people are so brilliant. I always expect you people to answer this question. Can you recall? The Charter Act of 1853. Civil services was first introduced in the Charter Act of 1853. Then introduction of portfolio system. What is the time period? 1861. Then local self-government 1882. So your answer is C, 1, 2 and 3. Ankur, what is the situation? 1, 2 and 3 is the answer. Question number 2. Which of the following items were included in the home charges? 1. Salary of the British officers. मतलब होम चार्जेज इन हिंदी दैट इज कॉल्ड गृह व्यय. आई हैव जस्ट मेंशन अबाउट द होम चार्जेज एंड यू पीपल आर सपोज टू आंसर दिस क्वेश्चन. दिस क्वेश्चन इज वेरी स्टैंडर्ड. यू हैव टू बी मेंटली अलर्ट. व्हिच ऑफ द फॉलोइंग आइटम्स वर इंक्लूडेड इन द होम चार्जेज? 1. सैलरी ऑफ द ब्रिटिश ऑफिसर्स. पॉइंट 2, पेंशंस टू रिटायर्ड ब्रिटिश ऑफिसर्स. पॉइंट 3, प्रॉफिट्स अर्न्ड बाय ब्रिटिश मर्चेंट्स इन इंडिया. एंड पॉइंट 4, द procurement of military equipment for Indian Army in Britain. मतलब procurement मतलब purchase, both are the same. Purchase of military equipment for Indian Army in Britain. Be fast. Maximum? No, 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 no. C is the correct answer. My students, once again, I have to make you clear. Just 1 minute. Let me clarify your statement, because according to my perception, my students should not find difficulty. मेरा अपना मानना है कि मेरे स्टूडेंट आपको बिल्कुल कॉन्सेप्चुअल क्लैरिटी होनी चाहिए. आज I will try at my best to make this topic crystal clear to you people. Let me discuss it first. Then I'll move to the third one question. Be mentally alert here. Whosoever have selected choice number C, that is correct. Salary of British officers. Actually, salary, my students, previously I have told you, once again I am repeating so that you will not get confused. Home charges was the amount which was transferred from India to Britain through the government channel. My students, home charges was the amount. Be clear, home charges was the amount which was not transferred through the private channel, rather from the government channel. So just observe here. If you are just observing the point number first, the salary of the British officers, it is not transferred through private channel. Sorry, it is not transferred through government channel, because it was not the liability of the British Indian government to transfer to London, because the salary was, you can say, offered and given in India itself. मतलब ये जो ब्रिटिश ऑफिसर्स का सैलरी है वो तो लंदन ट्रांसफर नहीं होता था, वो तो गवर्नमेंट चैनल से नहीं जाता था, वो प्राइवेट चैनल से जाता था. वो अपना ऑफिसर्स अपना भेजते थे जो उनको भेजना होता. So that is not the part of the home charges. And pensions to retired British officers, yes, that was transferred from the government channel. British Indian government London भेजती थी उन ऑफिसर्स को. So that was the liability. And I have discussed with you earlier what was or where the part of the home charges, and you people admitted this. The part of the home charges were the different items. For example, होम चार्जेज के पार्ट में मैंने आपको बताया, द फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल रेलवेज, पेमेंट रेलवेज, ओके. पॉइंट नंबर 2, गवर्नमेंट लोन्स. पॉइंट नंबर 3, द मिलिट्री परचेजेज मेड फॉर द इंडियन आर्मी इन लंदन फॉर इंडिया. अब मान लो इंडियन आर्मी के लिए लंदन में वो परचेज करते थे, तो उसका पेमेंट इंडियन एक्सचेकर से करते थे, तो हम लोगों की लायबिलिटी हो जाती थी, हालांकि वो गलत था. एंड पॉइंट नंबर 4, the pension amount of the British officers who after taking retirement they were staying in London. जो लंदन में ब्रिटिश ऑफिसर्स वहां स्टे कर रहे थे, उनका पेंशन भी हम भेज रहे थे. दैट वाज द पार्ट ऑफ द होम चार्जेस. So today my students, have you been clear? अब now point is that कि दादा भाई नौरोजी who has made the study of drain of wealth, be mentally alert. दादा भाई नौरोजी who made the study of drain of wealth, so he simply calculated home charges as the drain. मतलब दादा भाई नौरोजी के लिए पूरा का पूरा ड्रेन होम चार्जेज ही है. पॉइंट नंबर 1. एंड द सेकेंड वन पार्ट इज दैट अकॉर्डिंग टू दादा भाई नौरोजी ऑल टोटल अमाउंट वाज द ड्रेन. टोटल अमाउंट ऑफ होम चार्जेज वाज ड्रेन. We have come to the conclusion in the previous class, and even in my study material you may find, we have just come into in a previous class and in a study material we have find कि no, in drain of wealth, one item was a major part of home charges. A major part of home charges a major part of home charges. In the previous class, I have clarified this stand. मैंने आपको स्पष्ट कर दिया था. I have told you earlier, the total amount was not the amount of the home charges, because you know, a part of the amount at least was spent over the development work of India. It is true that they have brought the money at the very heavy cost. They favored the British capital. There was the misuse of fund in the British interest. So there was the wastage, a lot of wastage in favor of the British capital. So that was drain. But at least some amount was spent over the development of India. So total amount of home charges was not the drain. And second one item, a part of salary of British officers, a part of the salary of British officers, which was transferred to London. Which was transferred to London. My student, total salary was not drained. Only that part of the salary which was saved and transferred to London and which was spent in India, that was not drained. Are you clear? And point number third, the profit of private merchants which was transferred to Britain. Means that the private British capitalist which was making investment, I have told you earlier, actually British capital was coming to India in two forms, in the form of loan and in the form of investment. In the form of loan and in the form of investment. So whatever came in the form of loan, we were liable to pay the interest, and this interest payment and even the part of the principal amount had to be paid up by the British Indian government. So it became the government's liability. मतलब हम आपको ये बताना चाहते कि ब्रिटिश जो वहां से कैपिटल पूंजी ला रहे थे वो दो फॉर्म में ला रहे थे, एक तो कर्ज के रूप में, लोन के रूप में, और दूसरा निवेश के रूप में, इन्वेस्टमेंट के रूप में. तो जो वो कर्ज या लोन के रूप में ला रहे थे उस पर तो उनको इंटरेस्ट देना पड़ता, और कैसे जाता, तो इंडियन गवर्नमेंट के थ्रू हो जाता. लेकिन जो प्राइवेट कैपिटलिस्ट ने जाके चाय में, कॉफी बागान में, दे जस्ट इन्वेस्टेड इन ट्री गार्डन्स, द कॉफी गार्डन्स, shipping industry and many other fields. So they were earning profit on their investment, and this amount was transferred through private channels. So my students, पहली बात यह है कि आप गवर्नमेंट चैनल और प्राइवेट चैनल के फर्क को समझिए, otherwise you will commit a mistake in a question. Home charges was transferred through government channel, but drain of wealth was more than home charges. A substantial part of the home charges formed the part of the drain of wealth as well, but it was not sufficient. Even some other items would be added to it. मतलब कि ड्रेन ऑफ वेल्थ में एक होम चार्जेस तो पार्ट है, उसमें कुछ अदर आइटम्स भी आपको जोड़ना पड़ेगा. फॉर एग्जांपल आइटम नंबर 2, ए पार्ट ऑफ द सैलरी ऑफ ब्रिटिश ऑफिसर्स. आइटम नंबर 3, प्रॉफिट ऑफ प्राइवेट मर्चेंट्स which was transferred from India to London. I have done a counter question to me on your behalf. मैंने आपकी तरफ से अपने आप को क्वेश्चन पूछा कि सपोज टुडे इफ some countries making investment in other in the form of FDI or FII, so why is it not going to form the drain of wealth? Because it is also transferring the profit. मतलब कोई कंट्री आज भी कहीं इन्वेस्ट करता है, अपने प्रॉफिट को ट्रांसफर करता है, तो ड्रेन क्यों नहीं है? इट इज ड्यू टू द फैक्ट, इन फैक्ट द रूल्स फॉर द इन्वेस्टमेंट were decided by or formulated by the country concerned. You are given the freedom, you are given the right to invest at the terms of that country which has opened its market. Means कि here the investor is not going to decide the terms. मतलब आप अगर किसी कंट्री में इन्वेस्ट करते हो तो वो कंट्री डिसाइड करता है कि किन शर्तों पर, किन कंडीशंस पर आपको इन्वेस्टमेंट करवाएगा। और वहां तो उल्टी बात थी, ब्रिटिश ही डिसाइड करते थे कि किन शर्तों पर। ब्रिटिश यूज्ड टू मेक द take the conclusion, the British could have taken the decision about the amount of the investment, the condition of the investment, and not simply that, the British Indian government used to distort all trade routes in order to provide maximum benefit to the British capital. So it was the contravention of the basic rules of commerce. ये कॉमर्स का बेसिक रूल्स का कंट्रावेंशन था, उसको फेवर करते थे. So that was the drain. But my students, Dadabhai Naoroji has simply talked about home charges, and according to his calculation, whole home charges were drained. But Dadabhai Naoroji could not pay attention to the item number 2 and item number 3. The item number 2 and item number 3 have been added by other economists and other economic experts later. दादाभाई नौरोजी केवल पॉइंट नंबर 1 से ही वाकिफ थे, पॉइंट नंबर 2 एंड 3 के बारे में उन्होंने कुछ नहीं कहा था. अंकुर, ask my students कि now have they been clear or any problem, because I need clarity, then I will move further on the question, and you people are supposed to answer all the questions correctly. Okay, my students, be fast, inform me, please. So that I can go further. All are clear, my students? Then do the third question, because you are the brilliant people, are always giving the right answer, and that's why I am too much enthusiastic for this program. Which of the following constituted the drain of wealth? Point 1, a part of salary of British officers. Point 2, pensions to retired British officers. Point 3, profits earned by British merchants in India. Point 4, the procurement of military equipment for Indian Army in Britain. Be fast, my students. Choice A 2 and 3, choice B 1, 2, 3 and 4, choice C 2, 3 and 4, and choice D 1, 2 and 3. Yes, now I am happy at your response, my students. It is a matter of great rejoice for me. You have selected the right answer. Choice number B is the correct answer. Choice number B is the correct answer. Yes. This is a Venn diagram. My students, it will be a matter of happiest surprise for me if you are going to select one of them as the correct choice. Read the question, be fast. Which of the following diagrams represents the relationship between the drain of wealth and home charges? Which of the following diagrams represents the relationship between the drain of wealth and home charges? Be fast. See again. This is not the right choice. See again. What is the right choice? C is the correct answer. C is the correct answer. My students, You people are having the record of choosing the 5 out of 5 correct answers. If you find slight difficulty today, it means you are getting slightly diverted from your study. So I am just requesting you people to be punctual to your study and try to reappear in your earlier posture. आप सभी लोग फिर अपने पुराने वाले फॉर्म में लौटिए. थोड़ा आप स्लाइटली आज आपने थोड़ा सा एक दो क्वेश्चन में आपने मिस किया. दिस इज क्रिस्टल क्लियर वेन डायग्राम. दिस इज ए क्वेश्चन ऑफ रीजनिंग. In fact, not the all home, actually whenever you have to reflect the relationship between the home charges and the drain of wealth, you already know the fact that the whole amount of home charges was not forming the part, whole amount of home charges was not the drain of wealth. It was not a synonym for each other. A substantial part of home charges form the part of drain of wealth. Likewise, simply home charges didn't fulfill the criteria of drain of wealth. As all home charges was not the drain of wealth, so not all of drain of wealth was the home charges, because a substantial amount was coming from outside. For example, a part of the salary of British officers that was not forming the part of home charges, but it was the part of drain of wealth. The private profit of the British capitalists, which was being transferred from India to London, that was not the part of home charges, but that was the part of drain of wealth. मतलब जो ब्रिटिश ऑफिसर्स की सैलरीज है उसको तो आप होम चार्जेज में काउंट नहीं करोगे, जो यहां से वो पार्ट, लेकिन ड्रेन ऑफ वेल्थ है जो पार्ट वो यहां से ट्रांसफर करते हैं. एंड प्राइवेट ब्रिटिश मर्चेंट्स के प्रॉफिट को भी काउंट करोगे जो ट्रांसफर करते हैं, लेकिन वो गवर्नमेंट चैनल से जो ट्रांसफर होगा वही होम चार्जेज है. Not all the home charges are drain of wealth. Not all the drain of wealth is the home charges, because some other items should also be added. So C is the right answer. Ankur, what is the situation? Majority of them selected what? Last question. Which of the following was were the causes for the growth of industrialization in India after the First World War? India was relaxed from the burden of the British capital. Actually, my students, here is this industrial, actually the growth of industries in India I have not so far taught you, but today I will finish it. But I have placed this question before you, so please go through it. Which of the following was were the causes for the growth of industrialization in India after the First World War? Point 1. India was relaxed from the burden of the British capital. Point 2. Some of the Indian industries got the protection. मतलब आपसे पूछा जा रहा है कि भारत में, इंडिया में जो इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन में इंक्रीजमेंट हुआ उसके लिए कौन से कारण अकाउंटेबल थे. तो पहला है इंडिया वॉज रिलैक्स फ्रॉम द बर्डन ऑफ द ब्रिटिश कैपिटल. क्योंकि ब्रिटिश कैपिटल यहां से लंदन की तरफ मुड़ गया तो इंडिया पर से बर्डन ब्रिटिश कैपिटल का जो दबाव था वो कम हो गया. पॉइंट 2. सम ऑफ द इंडियन इंडस्ट्रीज गॉट द प्रोटेक्शन. कुछ इंडियन इंडस्ट्रीज को उसके बाद प्रोटेक्शन मिला फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड वॉर के बाद. और थर्ड वन, द कॉलोनियल गवर्नमेंट लेड द फाउंडेशन ऑफ द कैपिटल गुड्स इंडस्ट्रीज इन इंडिया. जो कॉलोनियल गवर्नमेंट है उसने भारत में कैपिटल गुड्स को, मैं कैपिटल गुड्स आगे बताऊंगा. Even if you are committing a mistake in this question, I will not having any complaint against you, because so far I have not taught this topic, but you people can try. Please move on. What is the situation? Okay. Actually, I have missed this point. In fact, in this question, there is not right choice. My student, the right choice is 1 and 2. I am sorry for the inconvenience for you people. I am sorry for the inconvenience, because in this particular question, the right choice has been missed out. The right choice is 1 and 2. 3 is wrong. British never pay attention to the foundation of capital goods industries. हाँ, ये बात है, फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड वॉर के बाद इंडस्ट्रीज को कुछ प्रोटेक्शन मिला. आई विल डिस्कस विथ यू. एंड इट इज इक्वली ट्रू कि ब्रिटिश कैपिटल का प्रेशर इंडियन मार्केट पर कम हुआ, इससे इंडियन कैपिटलिस्ट को थोड़ा फायदा हुआ. खैर चलिए. सो माय स्टूडेंट, दिस क्वेश्चन इज ओवर. वंस अगेन आई हैव टू cover first this drain of wealth phenomena of drain of wealth, so that you people have to be clear. Once again I am repeating here, and you people have to follow me. My students, that is clear कि home charges, every year money in the form of repayment of debt and payment of interest was transferred from India to Britain. That is home charges. That must be clear to you. Then मतलब जो अमाउंट इंडिया से ब्रिटेन ट्रांसफर होता था ब्रिटिश इंडियन गवर्नमेंट के मार्फत उनके थ्रू, वो होम चार्जेज कहलाता था. Industrialization in India, it was on the initiative of Indian capitalists that the industrialization in India began. Okay. Influx of British capital in India and the issue of home charges. Next one. After 1858, a huge amount of British capital was being brought to India. This capital was brought in following way: in the form of debt, कर्ज के रूप में, in the form of investment. I have made you clear. What does home charges imply? Home charges imply the regular transfer of a substantial amount of money from India to Britain. The payment of this amount was liability of the Indian government. It consisted of different items of payments. In different items, I have already dealt with the 4-1. Guaranteed profit of railway, interest on government loans, military expenditure, मतलब रेलवे का जो पेमेंट था वो गवर्नमेंट लोन पर जो इंटरेस्ट था वो प्लस गवर्नमेंट लोन का प्रिंसिपल अमाउंट, और मिलिट्री एक्सपेंडिचर फॉर इंडियन आर्मी डन इन ब्रिटेन, एक्सपेंसेस ऑफ द ऑफिसेस ऑफ सेक्रेटरी ऑफ स्टेट फॉर इंडिया. जैसे जो सेक्रेटरी ऑफ स्टेट लंदन में था तो उसके ऑफिस का जो एक्सपेंडिचर होता था वो भी हमें देना पड़ता था. तो मतलब कुल मिलाकर कोई आपसे पूछे तो आप यही कहना कि जो अमाउंट हमारे ब्रिटिश इंडियन गवर्नमेंट जो इंडिया में थी उसके थ्रू जो ट्रांसफर होता था होम चार्जेस था. The amount which was being transferred by the British Indian government to either private British capitalist or the British government. So this amount was characterized as the home charges. You have to be clear about that. No confusion at all. Then pensions to retired British officers I have already dealt with. Now my students, this diagram might have created a problem for you, but here I am making you crystal clear. I mean, crystal clear तो मैं कोशिश कर रहा हूँ, even if you can ignore it because it hardly matters for you. It is simply a conceptual aspect, nothing else. अब what was the mode of payment of the home charges? यहाँ home charges की बात कर रहा हूँ. Drain of wealth और home charges में थोड़ा फर्क है, उसमें आपको confusion में नहीं आना है, क्योंकि drain of wealth में home charges के अलावे भी कुछ items शामिल है. Because whenever you are counting the drain of wealth, some more items should be added. Only then the drain of wealth would be, the items of drain of wealth would be completed. अब now, if someone is going to ask you who was the head of the finance of India, choice A, Indian Parliament, choice B, British Parliament, choice C, Secretary of State, choice D, Viceroy of India. Once again, I am repeating the question. If someone is going to ask you the question, who was the head of finance in India and under the rule of the British Crown, who was the head of the finance of India? Choice number A, British Parliament, choice B, Indian Parliament, choice C, the Secretary of State, choice D, the Viceroy of India. Be fast. Answer my question. Try at least. Once again repeating, British Parliament A, Indian Parliament B, Secretary of State C, Secretary of State of India C, and Viceroy of India D. Be fast. Try. Secretary of State of India. Yes, you are correct. This is Secretary of State of India. Ab how he used to make a payment of home charges. Home charges that was transferred from British Indian government, and the head of the British Indian government finance was Secretary of India. He used to issue the council bills. Council bills, just like you can see in economics, you will just come to know government bond. So he will issue the council bills, and who will purchase the council bills? Do you know? This was the British merchants who were dealing in Indian products. Means ki those British merchants who have to purchase the Indian products in future. For example, today you can say if someone is selling the dollar, so which of the merchants will you prefer to purchase the dollar? Who are just dealing in international trade. डॉलर तो उन्हीं के लिए आवश्यकता है. तो जो सेक्रेटरी ऑफ स्टेट एक काउंसिल बिल जारी करता था, वो आज के गवर्नमेंट बॉन्ड की तरह था. उसको वो परचेज करता था, जो वह मर्चेंट्स होता था जो इंडिया से गुड्स खरीदता था, वो इसको परचेज कर लिया. ओके, एंड इमीडिएटली पेड द अमाउंट टू द सेक्रेटरी ऑफ स्टेट. इमीडिएटली सेक्रेटरी ऑफ स्टेट को अमाउंट किस में पेड किया? तो पाउंड में किया. पाउंड्स फॉर रिपेमेंट home charges. So council bills, payment in pound, and then this merchants, British merchants, who will just bring this council bills in India. Whenever he is purchasing the Indian products, he had to purchase the Indian products. So in place of cash, he will bring the council bills, and the council bills would be sent to the revenue account of India for encashment. Revenue account of India for encashment, and on the revenue account of India, at the prevailing rate of conversion from pound to rupees, they had to be converted in rupees. And after purchasing the Indian products, the merchants will just, take the money, rupees, because the rupees had already been converted. So converted rupees will be taken by the merchants, and the Indian purchases were being paid through this Indian rupees. Once again I am repeating. जैसे सेक्रेटरी ऑफ स्टेट है, उसने काउंसिल बिल इशू किया. जो प्राइवेट इंडियन मर्चेंट्स है, सॉरी वो मर्चेंट्स जो ब्रिटिश मर्चेंट्स है लेकिन वो इंडियन प्रोडक्ट्स में डील करते हैं, उन्होंने इसको परचेज किया. सेक्रेटरी ऑफ स्टेट को उन्होंने पाउंड में पे कर दिया. सेक्रेटरी ऑफ स्टेट पाउंड लेके उसको अमाउंट को, होम चार्जेज को भर दिया. अब वो मर्चेंट्स इंडिया आ गया. he made purchases of Indian products. इंडियन प्रोडक्ट्स को परचेज किया, और परचेज करने के बाद अब पैसा उसको पे करना है, तो वो अपना काउंसिल बिल इंडियन रेवेन्यू अकाउंट पर बैंक के थ्रू भेज दिया कि भाई जाइए इसको हमको इन कैश करके रुपीज में दीजिए. तो वो जो प्रिवेलिंग रेट था उसके आधार पर उनको कन्वर्ट करके रुपीज में पैसे मिल गए, और उसी रुपीज से उन्होंने अपना परचेजेज पे अप कर दिया, यहाँ से चले गए. तो कुल मिलाकर किसने पे किया? इंडियन रेवेन्यू अकाउंट ने पे किया. यहाँ से साइकिल बन के आया, इंडियन रेवेन्यू अकाउंट ने उसको पे किया. वंस अगेन आई एम रिपीटिंग फॉर इंग्लिश मीडियम स्टूडेंट्स, आई एम टेकिंग केयर ऑफ बोथ. Actually, Secretary of State issued the council bills, and the council bills were purchased by those British merchants who were dealing in Indian products. After purchasing the council bills, they paid the money to the Secretary of State, and the Secretary of State, through the money, he had already paid the amount of home charges. Then the British Indian merchants came to India for making purchases of Indian products. So Indian products were purchased, but in the meantime, the British merchants who came to India, so they brought with them the council bills as well, and through bank he sent the council bills on the Indian revenue account. So council bills will move on Indian revenue account, उसको राजस्व खाता कहते हैं हिंदी में, Indian revenue account, and on Indian revenue account, on the basis of the prevailing rate between the pound and the rupees, they had to be converted. They had to be converted, and then the Indian merchants will get the rupees. Okay, and the rupees had to be they would get the rupees, and the rupees had to be paid to the Indian. You can say the rupees had to be paid against the Indian purchases. So the merchants, the British merchants, would convert the council bills into rupees, and through the rupees they will make a payment of their purchases and carry the goods to London again. So finally, you can say, finally this Indian revenue account, the amount had to be placed on the Indian revenue account. And yeah, Indian revenue account is the final, it is making the final payment. This is the point. Ankur, my students have been clear about this diagram or not? Hemendra, oh, once again you are returning to the same question. My students, Dada Bhai Naroji has emphasized whole amount of home charges was drained. But we people have countered it कि no, at least अब होम चार्जेज का अमाउंट है, जैसे देखो ब्रिटेन वहां से पैसे भेज रहा है, मनी भेज रहा है, मैंने कैपिटल आ रहा है ब्रिटेन से, वो इंडिया में स्पेंड हो रहा है. तो दादा भाई नौरोजी का कहना है कि ये कैपिटल बेकार स्पेंड हो रहा है, दैट इज द यूजलेसली बीइंग स्पेंड, ये हमारे इंटरेस्ट में नहीं हो रहा है, और ये कैपिटल हमारा ही कैपिटल है जो पीछे से आया है. तो चूंकि हमारे इंटरेस्ट में नहीं हो रहा है इसलिए पूरा का पूरा ड्रेन है, मतलब बेकार है, वेस्टेज है. लेकिन हम लोगों ने तय किया. अच्छा, मॉरिसन कहता है नो नो नो, दिस अमाउंट वाज इसेंशियल फॉर द डेवलपमेंट ऑफ इंडिया. वी हैव कम टू द कंक्लूजन दैट whole of the drain of wealth, I mean, whole of the home charges was not the drain, but at least a substantial part of home charges were drained. So we come to the conclusion that a part of home charges were drained. First thing. Second one thing, a part of home charges were drained, but it was not simply home charges, because home charges was transferred through the government channel. But even some other items would have been added. One item was a part of the salary of British officers who were working in India. And the second one part was the profit of the merchants who were transferred from India to London. They were also forming the part of home charge. They were also forming the part of drain of wealth, but they were not forming the part of home charges. So is Hemant clear now? Yes. Are you clear, Hemant? Council bill was just like the government bond. Do you understand? Bond के बारे में थोड़ा जानकारी है? Do you know about bond? Government sometime in order to collect the loan from the market through RBI, it is issuing bond, and you are purchasing the government bond. So you are given the bond, through bond you are given the guarantee, but the government is taking a loan from you, and there is certain amount of interest on the bond. It is government is just, you can say, acquiring the loan from the market through issuing the bond to the agency of RBI. So just like this is council bill, Secretary of State was issuing just like the Indian government of presently Indian government's bond. Okay hai? No problem. Once again, please. Nothing. If Indian revenue account could have got something, then it could not have been the drain. Indian revenue account was getting nothing in return. That's why it was drained. Just try to understand, if Indian revenue account might have got something, in what way it was drained then? It was simply an exchange, but it was not an exchange. It was the one-sided exchange. Directly, actually, how could they have take the money from the Jyoti, if they could have taken the money from Indian revenue account directly, it could have been caught up the side of Indian nationalist, and there might have been criticism of the British policy. So in order to throw dust into the eyes of the common Indians, they just devise this complex mechanism. Council bill will just gradually come, and after some time the council bill would be encashed. If the Secretary of State could have taken the amount directly from Indian Exchequer, it could have been visible to the people then. एंड नेशनलिस्ट स्कॉलर्स, मैंने अगर ऐसा वो करते तो जो नेशनलिस्ट स्कॉलर्स है वो तुरंत पकड़ लेते कि देखो भाई ये इतना अमाउंट उठा कर ले गए। तो एक तरह से इंडियंस के आंखों में धूल झोंकने के लिए उन्होंने बहुत कॉम्प्लेक्स मैकेनिज्म बना दिया था। तो इवन माय हिंदी मीडियम स्टूडेंट्स आर क्लियर, मतलब सॉरी इंग्लिश बोथ आर क्लियर, और एनीबडी हैज डिफिकल्टी? इन हिंदी में या इंग्लिश में? अच्छा माय स्टूडेंट्स, फॉर द सेक ऑफ इंग्लिश I am going to repeat the diagram. So please my students of English medium will have the patience and थोड़ा सा 1 मिनट मुझे टाइम दे दीजिए, मैं हिंदी में उनको समझा देता हूँ। देखिए, ये जो सेक्रेटरी ऑफ स्टेट है उसका नाम तो भारत सचिव हिंदी में आपको पता है। ये अगर चाहता तो डायरेक्ट इंडियन रेवेन्यू अकाउंट से पैसा मंगवा सकता था, लेकिन वैसी स्थिति में ये विजिबल हो जाता, लोगों को दिख जाता। उन्होंने चालाकी क्या करता था कि वो काउंसिल बिल इशू कर देता था, वो काउंसिल बिल खरीद लेता था वो ब्रिटिश मर्चेंट्स जो इंडियन प्रोडक्ट्स में यहाँ ट्रेड करता था। जैसे उसको भविष्य में इंडिया में बिजनेस करना था, वो अपना काउंसिल बिल खरीद कर रिजर्व में रख लिया। अब जब इंडिया वो आ रहा है व्यापार करने, तो उसने क्या किया, उस काउंसिल बिल पहले परचेजिंग कर लिया। पता चला कि हमने $1 लाख रुपए का परचेज किया। वो क्या करेगा, बैंक में जाके काउंसिल बिल जमा कर देगा, कहेगा कि भाई इसको आप हमको इन कैश करके दीजिए। उस बैंक से वो काउंसिल बिल चला जाएगा भारत के राजस्व खाते पर, इंडियन रेवेन्यू अकाउंट पर, और इंडियन रेवेन्यू अकाउंट पर वो फिर रुपीज में कन्वर्ट हो जाएगा, जितना जो रेट चल रहा होगा उसके अनुसार, और थोड़ा सा इंटरेस्ट भी उस पर मिल जाएगा। वो पैसा उसके हाथ में आ गया, उसी से वो अमाउंट ले जाके अपना जिससे उसने परचेज किया उसको पेमेंट कर दिया और अपना सामान लेके फिर वापस चला गया ब्रिटेन। तो उससे क्या होता था, अगर डायरेक्ट सेक्रेटरी ऑफ स्टेट यहां से निकालता तो दिखता, और इतना ज्यादा वो कॉम्प्लिकेटेड प्रोसेस कर दिया कि इंडियंस को पता नहीं चल पाता था। Am I clear, Ankur? Are my students clear? English medium students are clear? Yeah. अब debate regarding home charge. I am very interesting debate I have to discuss with you. You have to be mentally alert and stay here. Dada Bhai Naroji, while criticizing home charges, declared it to be the drain of filth. He criticized home charges on the following grounds. Yesterday, I have discussed this aspect with you. The British borrowed money on a higher rate and invested that in railway and not in development of irrigation infrastructure, while the utmost priority of investment in India must have been irrigation projects. उनका कहना था कि भाई आपने पैसा लेकर रेलवे में आपने इन्वेस्ट किया, मुझे रेलवे नहीं चाहिए था, हमें चाहिए था इरिगेशन, सिंचाई चाहिए था, आपने गलत इन्वेस्टमेंट कर दिया और बहुत हेवी रेट में आप लाए। इन 5% गारंटीड प्रॉफिट, 2% में भी आप ला सकते थे। Point number 2, also the capital invested by the British in India was the money they have taken back as the part of profit and remittance. So no additional capital was added from the British pockets. मतलब इनका कहना है कि देखो जो अमाउंट आप लेकर आए, that was not a new amount. Rather, this was the amount we had earlier carried from India to Britain, and the same amount you have brought again, and again you are taking interest. मतलब कि आप उसी अमाउंट को लाए हो जो पहले यहां से ले जा चुके हो, फिर उस पर दोबारा इंटरेस्ट लेके जा रहे हो, कोई नया अमाउंट नहीं है। थर्ड वन, apart from that, if there was indigenization of the civil services, then there would have been no need to send the amount of pension to retired officers in Britain. If there were, जब इच्छा प्रकट करने के लिए जब हो कि जब कोई विश करना हो तो उसमें वॉज की जगह वेयर आ जाता है। तो अपार्ट फ्रॉम दैट, इफ देयर वेयर इंडियनाइजेशन of civil services, then there would have been no need to send the amount of pension to retired officers in Britain. ये तो मैं आपको डिस्कस कर चुका हूं, नो प्रॉब्लम एट ऑल। Then however the British apologists scholars like Morrison, ये भी मैं डिस्कस कर चुका हूँ, not wasting time. Should only home charges be included under the sphere of drain of wealth or other items would have been? So 3 items I have discussed about you. If anywhere you find difficulty, you can go through it. Now explain the limitations of Dadabhai Naoroji view on drain of wealth. Now here I have to discuss with you, even the Dadabhai Naoroji's or the view of Dadabhai Naoroji was having certain limitations on drain of wealth. मतलब दादाभाई नौरोजी के विचारों की भी अपनी सीमा है, वो जो कहते हैं सभी करेक्ट नहीं है, बहुत सारा लूप होल्स है उनके विचारों में. मतलब here you have to find out even the Naoroji's ideas and Naoroji's view is not innocent. It was having certain loopholes, so we have to give focus over the loopholes. Point first, he was intended to prove that the amount transferred from India to Britain was not simply money but capital. This is a very important and valuable point. Dadabhai Naoroji tried to emphasize that the amount which had been transferred from India to London, so that was not simply money but capital. Now you can ask me the question, what was the difference between money and capital? There was a greater difference. Money means you can say you can use the money even on luxury, you can spend the money on luxurious goods, you can spend the money uselessly. But if that is capital, so capital is the money ready for investment. Capital means कि the money which is ready for investment, it is not for wasted, it is the productive investment is capital. Okay? मतलब उनका ये कहना था कि जो पैसा हमारे यहाँ से ट्रांसफर होकर ब्रिटेन गया, वो केवल धन नहीं था, वह पूंजी थी, वह कैपिटल था. भाई तो आप कैसे इसको प्रूव करोगे? हाउ आर यू गोइंग टू प्रूव दैट? इट इज ट्रू, if the money could not have been transferred from India to Britain, so the condition of economic condition of India could not have been so wretched. It is true, but it is equally difficult to prove that if this money could have stayed in India, it might have channelized in productive investment. Even it is equally difficult to prove. मतलब हम ये प्रूव तो कर सकते हैं कि अगर वो मनी यहाँ से नहीं जाता, वो धन नहीं जाता, तो इंडियंस की इकोनॉमिक कंडीशन इतनी खराब नहीं होती. लेकिन ये हम कैसे प्रूव करेंगे कि वो मनी अगर रह जाता तो उसका प्रोडक्टिव इन्वेस्टमेंट होता? एज इंडिया डिडंट अंडरगो अ फेज ऑफ सोशल ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन. माय स्टूडेंट्स, social transformation is prelude to economic investment. Suppose you can say at the highest ladder of your society, if there is the kings, nawabs and nobles, so nobles are normally taking interest into luxuries and spending money on luxuries. If there is the rise of a productive middle class, so middle class is normally, middle class is having the track record, middle class is having a long track record in investment in economy. तो अगर वैसा मिडिल क्लास हमारे यहाँ होता जो प्रोडक्टिव इन्वेस्टमेंट करता तो बात अलग थी. लेकिन हमारे यहाँ तो अभी भी जो राजा, नवाब और कुलीन हैं, जो नोबल्स हैं, उन्हीं का डोमिनेंस था. वो पैसे को प्रोडक्टिव इन्वेस्टमेंट में लगाती, इस पर डाउट है. सो माय स्टूडेंट्स, यू मे बी क्लियर. एंड देन ही हेल्ड ओनली हैंडफुल ऑफ ब्रिटिश रेस्पॉन्सिबल फॉर एक्सप्लॉयटेशन ऑफ इंडिया. ही हेल्ड ओनली अ हैंडफुल ब्रिटिश ऑफिसर्स. And here we can use the term also Anglo-Indian bureaucracy. मतलब he simply hold Anglo-Indian bureaucracy accountable for the exploitation of India. Here I have to prove this thing कि actually here I have to prove this. Anglo-Indian bureaucracy means कि those British officers who were staying in India, who were doing the work. So actually Dadabhai Naoroji has composed a text. I have just mentioned about the text and you people are familiar with. Poverty and un-British rule in India. If you will just make the literal meaning of poverty and un-British rule in India, it does mean that for the poverty of India, only those British are responsible who are working in India. But the British at London are the good people, they are just people. They are progressive people. In fact, they try to make a distinction between the British at London and British in India. So in British who were working in India, so they were not the good people, but the British at London were the very good and just people. So what sort of rule was introduced in India? So that was not the British rule, that was un-British rule, because it is against the basic nature of the British race. मतलब उन्होंने ये सिद्ध करने की कोशिश की कि भारत में जो गवर्नमेंट इस्टेब्लिश किया गया है वो ब्रिटिश है ही नहीं, वो कुछ जो हैंडफुल ऑफ, जो कुछ मुट्ठी भर ब्रिटिश अधिकारी यहाँ पर आकर वही कुशासन कर रहे हैं, मिस गवर्नेंस कर रहे हैं, और जो लंदन के ब्रिटिश है वो अच्छे हैं, परंतु उनको पता ही नहीं है कि इंडिया में क्या हो रहा है. माय स्टूडेंट्स, इज इट जस्टिफाइड, इज इट राइट टू से the officers of London are not aware of what was happening in India? My students, all happens in case of London. London plan is being formulated at London and the British officers are simply implementing the plan. But Dadabhai Naoroji possibly missed to understand the exact nature of the British colonial government. Means it was, colonial structure is a global structure and it was guided by the metropolitan region. Metropolitan means कि through the London's government is the chief architect of this colonial policy. So Dadabhai Naoroji was not aware. He was simply blaming a handful of British officers who were working in India. How far it was justified? So point number 2 is equally wrong. Then he only accounted for the amount of transferred, the amount transferred by the Indian government but not by the private capitalist. When he calculated, when his calculation simply, he did the calculation of the amount what you know as the home charges which was being transferred by Indian government to the British government, or the British Indian government to London. I mean, what you know as the home charges, in calculation of Dadabhai Naoroji, only that lies. But Dadabhai Naoroji did not make any calculation how was the British officers working in India used to transfer a part of their salary to London. It was also a drain. And how the British merchants who were just doing business in India and investing in India, they used to transfer their profit from India to Britain. मतलब दादाभाई नौरोजी का जो आंकड़ा था, उनका जो कैलकुलेशन था, उसमें केवल जो ब्रिटिश इंडियन गवर्नमेंट ने जो ट्रांसफर किया उसी का उन्होंने केवल कैलकुलेशन किया है. लेकिन जो यहाँ प्राइवेट ब्रिटिश ऑफिसर्स जो अपने सैलरी का पार्ट ट्रांसफर कर रहे हैं या प्राइवेट मर्चेंट्स ट्रांसफर कर रहे हैं, दादाभाई नौरोजी उसको कैलकुलेट नहीं कर पा रहे हैं. ये लिमिटेशंस है, थोड़ा सा लिमिटेशंस दादाभाई नौरोजी का भी है. बट माय स्टूडेंट्स, हियर यू कैन से, but at least you have to give some consolation to Dadabhai Naoroji. Give a happy ending in his favor, because here you find still the contribution of Dadabhai Naoroji can never be undermined, as he was the only thinker after Marx who strongly criticized the colonial model of economy. Means कि Dadabhai Naoroji, after Karl Marx, Dadabhai Naoroji was the only thinker who could have made such a wide extent exposition of colonial economy. मतलब कार्ल मार्क्स ने तो सबसे पहले स्टडी किया दुनिया का जो औपनिवेशिक अर्थव्यवस्था है, कॉलोनियल इकोनॉमी है. लेकिन कॉलोनियल इकोनॉमी को कार्ल मार्क्स के बाद किसी और ने इतना वाइडली किसी ने अगर स्टडी किया है तो दादाभाई नौरोजी ने किया है. तो दादाभाई नौरोजी के हम क्रेडिट को डिनाई नहीं कर. तो माय स्टूडेंट्स, हियर यू हैव टू बी केयरफुल अबाउट द फैक्ट दैट इन स्पाइट ऑफ सर्टेन लिमिटेशंस, दादाभाई नौरोजी was having a major contribution. Sometime it is said कि he was Dadabhai Naoroji made a major contribution in the rise of economic nationalism in India. Economic nationalism means that through criticizing the economic policy of the British, he prepared the basis for modern nationalism. So here you can write the sentence. You can write the sentence. दादा भाई नौरोजी made a major contribution to the rise of economic nationalism in India. And wherever you have to write about the contribution of दादा भाई नौरोजी, you can write this sentence. मतलब इकोनॉमिक नेशनलिज्म का मतलब वो आर्थिक राष्ट्रवाद के विकास में दादा भाई नौरोजी ने महान योगदान दिया. In other words, through criticizing and through attacking on colonial economy, he prepared the basis for modern nationalism. That is called economic nationalism. As for example, you can give what statement he gave over the British economic policy on India. So what statement he gave, it is on this basis you can mention he did so and so, and in this way he made an attack over the economic nationalism. My students, the next one issue is, that is not very difficult. Next one issue is, that is, here you find the emergence of modern industries in India. In modern industry, you can say, here you are given the information you might have gone through here. In fact, the British is making a bigger claim, we have did a lot for the modernization of India. We have modernized India, we have industrialized India, through industrialization we have modernized India. But our scholars are not going to be convinced about the fact. They just try to establish that basically you have always discouraged industrialization in India because you have to develop India as the market for the British manufactured goods. We have always discouraged industrialization in India, and India could move on the pace of, and India could move on the way of industrialization, or India could move on the pace of industrialization whenever your grip over Indian economy was weakened or relaxed. So far as your grip was strong on Indian economy, you didn't allow to modern industries to develop. मतलब देखो, उन्होंने क्लेम किया है ब्रिटिश स्कॉलर्स ने कि हमने इंडियन इकोनॉमी को मॉडर्नाइज किया और इंडिया को इंडस्ट्रियलाइज किया. हम लोगों का क्लेम यह है कि देखिए, आप चूंकि इंडिया का यूज ब्रिटिश प्रोडक्ट्स के मार्केट के रूप में करना चाहते थे, तो ये आपके इंटरेस्ट में नहीं था कि इंडिया में आप मॉडर्न इंडस्ट्रीज को बनने दें. तो सच्चाई तो यह है कि हमारे यहाँ मॉडर्न इंडस्ट्रीज का डेवलपमेंट तब हुआ जब हमारी इकोनॉमी पर आपकी पकड़ कमजोर हुई. तो ये हमारा तर्क है. तो हियर माय स्टूडेंट्स, हियर आई हैव टू इन्फॉर्म यू कि ब्रिटिश ऑलवेज डिस्करेज इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन इन इंडिया, बट इवन बिकॉज once the, you can say, railway engine was introduced in India, you might have heard a proverb, if winter comes, can spring be far behind, because it is on the same principle the railway engine might function, and on the same principle the modern industry had to work. So obviously you can say कि once the Indians became familiar with the railway engine, so gradually they themselves took initiative in foundation of modern industry. मतलब भारतीय रेलवे इंजन से वाकिफ हुए तो मॉडर्न उद्योगों की स्थापना के लिए, मॉडर्न इंडस्ट्रीज की स्थापना में पहल कर दी. उसमें अ ग्रुप ऑफ मर्चेंट्स थे वेस्टर्न कोस्ट पर, इन बॉम्बे, in Gujarat part of Bombay, because at that time Gujarat was the part of Bombay presidency. So there was a place Bharuch in Gujarat, but that was the part of Bombay. So there were certain, you can say, basically they were the Parsi merchants. Among the Parsi merchants, one was Kwasji Nana Bhai. So Kwasji Nana Bhai, just you will come to know, if you will just come to know, you might have gone through my study material. So मॉडर्न इंडस्ट्रीज में इनिशियल इंडस्ट्रीज है, यू विल फाइंड टू टाइप्स ऑफ इंडस्ट्रीज. वन इज कॉटन गुड्स, क्वासजी नाना भाई एट वेस्टर्न कोस्ट, here you can say jute industries. अब it is a matter of surprise, once Kwasji Nana Bhai laid the foundation of the first cotton goods industry, पहला सूती वस्त्र उद्योग उन्होंने स्थापित किया, तो very fastly the cotton goods industry multiplied in western coast. So western coast became the, you can say, the hub of cotton goods industries. And there was basic, and here the basic investment came from the Indian merchants. The basic investment here, you can say, the basic investment came from Indian merchants, and then western coast became the hub of the cotton goods industries. In the meantime, you will observe here, you will find that jute industries, the avenue of jute industries was Bengal, and here the initiative was taken by some British इंडस्ट्रियलिस्ट themselves. They were from Britain, they were the some maverick people. पता नहीं सिर्फ फिरे ब्रिटिश लोग थे, उनको क्या धुन सवार हुई कि बंगाल में उन्होंने जूट इंडस्ट्रीज को एस्टेब्लिश किया. एंड द फर्स्ट वन, द ब्रिटिश यू कैन से एंटरप्रेन्योर वाज ऑकलैंड, एंड ऑकलैंड इन 1855, ये 1853 में इन्होंने एस्टेब्लिश किया था. पहला कॉटन गुड्स इन्होंने 1855 में किया ऑकलैंड ने, ऑकलैंड. And then Bengal became the hub of the jute industries. But my student, there was the basic problem. Actually, for industrialization, certain conditions must have been fulfilled. There should be the supporting role of banking system, supporting role of managing agency. But banking and managing agency both were under the British control. Managing agency क्या होती है कि वो क्या होती है कि इंडस्ट्रीज को लॉजिस्टिक सपोर्ट देती है चलाने में. तो वैसी मैनेजिंग एजेंसी के बिना इंडस्ट्री चलाना मुश्किल है, और उसमें ब्रिटिश कैपिटल होता था, तो दे वर नॉट कोऑपरेटिंग विद द इंडियन कैपिटलिस्ट. सो दैट वाज द वन, सेकंड वन फैक्टर. थर्ड वन फैक्टर वाज कि इन इंडिया देयर वाज द डर्थ ऑफ स्किल्ड लेबर. स्किल्ड लेबर कहाँ से आता? यू कैन वेरी वेल इमेजिन, बिकॉज हियर यू कैन से कि दे डिडंट लेड फाउंडेशन ऑफ द इंजीनियरिंग कॉलेज. At that time, you will find the example of the single engineering college, Roorkee. So not a skilled labor, And worst of all, study post nahi. I have not told you so far. Today I am telling you. Suppose you can say that some country has already moved on the path of industrialization. So some has progressed a lot in the field of industrialization, and whosoever going to join later in the field of industrialization, so they are lagging behind the first one. So who started industrialization during the late phase, the solution for them is what? The solution for them is that they had to give protection to their industries. They have to give protection to their industries. How could they give protection to their industry? Suppose you can say is some country and your products are competing with some other country's products which is industrially more advanced. So his product would be cheaper. Suppose you can say his products would be 20% cheaper than your products. Even your people will purchase their products, not your product. So the products would be beaten. There is the solution, you will just impose their 30% custom duties. So then the price of his products would increase by 30%. It means it will be more than 10% costlier than your product. डू यू अंडरस्टैंड दिस पॉइंट और नॉट? मतलब अर्लियर 20% उसका चीपर था और तुम्हारा कॉस्टली था, लेकिन अब 30% तुमने ड्यूटीज लगा दिया तो उसका 10% तुमसे ज्यादा कॉस्टलियर हो जाएगा. So then his products are going to be Britain. So after Britain, which country moved for industrialization? They tried to give protection to their industries. But in the British Indian government didn't allow protection to Indian industries till the First World War. Till the First World War, you know. So that is the basic problem. Yes, Ankur. Pound. Council bills were just sold in pound, and then council bill was converted on Indian revenue account in rupees. And whosoever was purchasing the council bills, so they used to make a payment of the Secretary of State into rupees. Sorry, not into rupees, sorry, I mistakenly told you. Once again I am repeating. So whosoever purchasing the council bills, so they were making payment to Secretary of State into pound. And then council bills came to India, so it could have been converted into rupees on Indian revenue account. लाया ही क्यों गया मतलब? अब प्रमोद को मैं क्या जवाब दूं? सारी कहानी प्रमोद को बता चुका हूं कि ब्रिटिश वहां से अपना कैपिटल लाते थे, वो मालिक थे, वो तय करते थे कि हमारे यहाँ कितना कैपिटल आएगा और कहां कहां लगेगा. वही चोर थे, वही कोतवाल थे, और हम पर इंटरेस्ट भी थोपा हुआ था और हमारे ऊपर लायबिलिटी रख दी और यहाँ से भेज दिया. तो ये आपका अपना गवर्नमेंट प्रमोद नहीं था, ये कॉलोनियल गवर्नमेंट था जो आपको लूटने आया था. केवल लूटने की जो तरकीब थी वो अलग अलग थी. ये तो मैंने आपको पूरी कहानी बता दी. आप तो बड़ा फंडामेंटल क्वेश्चन उठा रहे हो कि लाया ही क्यों गया, इसका मैं क्या जवाब दूं? नो Hemendra, no. NRI's money is not drained. Why? Because we are not deciding the terms for the labor, and or you can say the amount of the salary or condition of the work. This is the country concerned. He is required of my labor. He is hiring my labor. But British is imposing their labor on us. हमारे पास अगर चॉइस रहता तो हम उनके सिविल सर्वेंट्स को नहीं लेते, उनके मर्चेंट्स को इन्वेस्टमेंट के लिए नहीं खोलते. हम जर्मन मर्चेंट्स को बुलाते, अमेरिकन मर्चेंट्स को बुलाते. So my students, actually British didn't give us the choice. They have fixed the terms, and at their own terms they appointed their officers and they made investment in India. So obviously you can say not. Both are the same. Remittances, Bhavna, I have just already replied the question of Hemendra. Remittance is not the drain of wealth. Man, drain of wealth, remittance from India to Britain as the home charges, it was going on. So a part of the home charges was the drain of wealth. Differ from, he was the head of the Indian revenue account. He was the part of Indian administration. Secretary of State was the head of Indian finance and the part of Indian revenue account, you know. The British provided protection, it is after the First World War. I am just in the mid course. In your question, I have told you, in fact, initially they didn't give protection to our industries. But here I have to inform you, when the First World War started, so once the First World War started, you know, so basically at the time of the First World War, just after the First World War, because here I have to inform you, initially they discouraged industrialization, but during the First World War, we got opportunity to industrialize India. Why? Because in fact, the Indian market was filled up with the British capital, but during this critical juncture, the Indian amount was transferred from India to, actually the British capital used to have the control over India at that time, the tough control over India, you know. So as the First World War started, so Britain faced the economic crisis. So due to the crisis, Britain transferred its capital from India to Europe, because British capital was invested in European theatre. तो ब्रिटेन जो अपना रकम यहाँ से जो अपना इन्वेस्टमेंट खींच के जब यूरोप ले गया तो हमारे मार्केट पर प्रेशर कम हुआ. तो मेकिंग बेनिफिट फ्रॉम द सिचुएशन, इंडियन कैपिटलिस्ट एक्सपेंडेड देयर कैपिटल इन इंडिया. तो after the First World War, there was the investment in different segments of industries. For example, iron and steel industries, paper industries, cement industries. I have mentioned in your study material, cement industries, matches industries. The British capital expanded after the First World War. So here I have to inform you, if whenever the British capitalism is in crisis, the Indian capitalist made benefit from this crisis. In NCERT book, you people might have read here in NCERT book about G.R.D. Tata. He laid the foundation of iron and steel company TISCO, but his company was on the verge of being closed thanks to the First World War. As the First World War started and the British iron and steel companies were busy in the European order, so in the meantime the British Indian government was not having any option but he placed the order to TISCO and Tata iron and steel companies. So TISCO was saved, otherwise TISCO could have been closed. Money, कोई भी money है जो ज्योति, you can spend money anywhere. On the luxuries also you can spend the money, but capital is a very different thing. जो capital है, if your money is, sorry, in sum total, Jyoti, I am making you more clear. Money is all the you can say amount is money, but only those amount is capital which is meant for investment. Which is spent over luxury. You are purchasing a car for luxury, you are purchasing your clothes luxury, that is money. But suppose you are laying foundation of some cottage industries for livelihood, so that is capital. So this is the difference. Should I go further? Yeah. So likewise you will come to know, after the First World War, the British government for the first time give protection to our industries. Likewise, here I have to inform you, during the World Economic Depression, you will come to know कि World Economic Depression, in fact, जिसको विश्व आर्थिक मंदी कहते हो, उस समय ब्रिटिश कैपिटलिज्म क्राइसिस में था. ब्रिटिश कैपिटलिज्म वाज इन क्राइसिस, तो इंडियन कैपिटलिज्म मेड बेनिफिट एंड एक्सपेंडेड इट्स इंडस्ट्रीज. Likewise, during the Second World War, the British capital was in the acute crisis. So Indian capitalists made benefit from the situation and expanded its capital in different segments of industry further. So up to the Second World War, the sufficient, you can say at least some basic industrialization was done in India. You will come to know. And then you can say, my students, almost the topic is over. I am just returning to diagram, so I have to make you clear. Here you have to go through, critically comment on the growth of modern industry. That is the model question I have given to you. You have to go through it. And the British used to express benevolent approach towards Indians, but frequent famines under the British rule seem to expose their reality. Comment. Maybe I have just given to you just for your help. You go through this model answer and you will find difficulty, you will ask me. And critically comment on the growth of modern industries. Then you can say impact of the First World War and Second World War. And explain how did the revolt of 1857 prove to be a landmark event in Indian history. Here I am making clear. For example, just 1 minute. Just 1 minute. This diagram, mainly up to this point, that is over. Here the social policy, it is simply for, it is a complementary work. It is not the main work. In social policy, you will underline a single one change. You have to be careful. In social policy, you can say after taking the lesson from the Great Revolt of 1857, the British became worried. The British didn't dare to bring social reforms further. मतलब ब्रिटिश एवॉइडेड सोशल रिफॉर्म्स एंड इट फॉलोड द पॉलिसी ऑफ नॉन इंटरवेंशन इनटू इंडियन सोसाइटी। मतलब 1857 के रिवोल्ट से ब्रिटिश डर गए और जो भी सोशल रिफॉर्म समाज सुधार कर रहे थे उसको रोक दिया, और उन्होंने एक पॉलिसी अपनाई जिसको कहते हैं अहस्तक्षेप की नीति, दैट इज द पॉलिसी ऑफ नॉन इंटरवेंशन इन सोसाइटी। एंड ड्यूरिंग दिस पीरियड इट डज नॉट मीन दैट कि ब्रिटिश डिडंट bring reforms. British brought reforms, but British brought reforms only under the nationalist pressure. Here I have given the example when B.N. Malawari, under the initiative of B.N. Malawari, the British could have introduced the age of consent bill in which the marriage barrier for the, you can say marriage limit for the girls was increased further. तो इस तरह से आप देखते हैं कि वहां पर वो जब नेशनलिस्ट प्रेशर होता था तभी वो सोशल रिफॉर्म्स लाते थे। सोशल में ये पॉलिसी है। एंड हियर यू कैन से रेशियल डिवीजन आफ्टर 1857 they just tried to villainize Indians and they tried to project Indians that they are barbarous, uncivilized. One trend is, in fact, they just tried to maintain distance between Indians and the British, and the Indians were consciously projected as barbarous, and British discarded the so-called slogan of civilizing India. They left the policy of civilizing India after the Great Revolt of 1857. एंड द सेकेंड वन फैक्टर वॉज, मतलब जैसे पहले वो कहते थे कि हम इंडिया को सिविलाइज करेंगे, इंडिया को इंडिपेंडेंट बनाएंगे, लेकिन 1857 के बाद उनका अप्रोच चेंज कर गया और वो कहते थे कि इंडियन लोग अनसिविलाइज्ड हैं, बारबरस हैं, मतलब बर्बर हैं, तो बेटर टू कीप डिस्टेंस फ्रॉम देम। एंड द सेकेंड वन इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग इज कि आफ्टर द ग्रेट रिवोल्ट ऑफ 1857 दे इंट्रोड्यूस्ड अ न्यू पॉलिसी, दैट इज द पॉलिसी ऑफ डिवाइड एंड रूल। एक तरह से दे ट्राई टू क्रिएट द religious differences within Indian society, communal differences. Earlier they tried to follow the policy of discrimination against Muslims because they just took the Muslims as the main villain at the Great Revolt of 1857. And after some time they started to introduce the same policy against Hindus. तो पहले उन्होंने क्या किया, 1857 के रिवोल्ट के जस्ट बाद पहले मतलब डिस्क्रिमिनेशन जो है, भेदभाव मुसलमानों के अगेंस्ट शुरू किया और बाद में चलकर हिंदुओं के अगेंस्ट में शुरू कर दिया। एंड दे हैव कॉन्शियसली क्रिएटेड अ क्लीवेज बिटवीन द टू, व्हिच आई हैव टू डिस्कस विथ यू लेटर। अब माय स्टूडेंट्स, हियर जस्ट लास्ट a very standard question I have to deal with you. Just 1 minute. Just 1 minute. Just one. Oh, just 1 minute, my students. अब देखो, this question has already asked in UPSC 2016 UPSC. Very important question, and that very simple. Explain how did the revolt of 1857 prove to be a landmark event in conduct of the British policy towards India. मतलब ये क्वेश्चन आपसे पूछ रहा है कि जरा आप यह पता करिए कि in what way, in 2016 UPSC this question was asked कि in 1857 how did it became a landmark इन द कंडक्ट ऑफ द ब्रिटिश पॉलिसी टुवर्ड्स इंडिया। मतलब आप 1857 के रिवोल्ट के बाद इंडिया में ब्रिटिश पॉलिसी में क्या टर्निंग पॉइंट देखते हो, यू हैव टू फाइंड आउट। वेरी सिंपल आंसर, आई हैव जस्ट आंसर्ड इट इन 150 वर्ड्स। द साइज ऑफ द क्वेश्चन इज 150 वर्ड्स। आंसर, द ग्रेट रिवोल्ट ऑफ 1857 had posed an existential threat for the British rule in India. Thus, after this revolt, the major objective of the British policies towards India was to avoid recurrence of any such revolt again. This is your thesis line. This is your thesis line because this is meaningful. After 1857, the crux of the British policy was to avoid the recurrence of such a revolt because it has given almost existential threat to the British rule in India. क्योंकि 1857 के रिवोल्ट ने ब्रिटिश शासन के अस्तित्व पर ही चिन्ह लगा दिया। तो अब उनकी पूरी पॉलिसी यही है कि आगे फिर इस तरह की इंसिडेंट का, इस तरह का जो एक्सीडेंट है उसका फिर रिकरेंस ना हो, फिर दोबारा उसकी पुनरावृत्ति ना हो. So the British policy in relation to India adopted after 1858 should be understood with the following perspective. 1. The administration of India was now under the direct control of the British Crown. Also, the famous proclamation of Queen Victoria tried to create a trust between the Crown and the Indian rulers. Point 2. The administrative changes were meant to ensure on one hand that a strict British control could be established over India, and on the other hand no discontent among the masses was fueled. It can be understood with the following examples. The Office of the Secretary of State for India was created. Administrative decentralization on the basis of the Act of 1861 and the beginning of financial decentralization by 1870s, and also introduced of the statutory civil services, whereby for the first time some Indians were allowed on higher posts. Third, then in order to provide a strong base for the British rule in India, it was also necessary to strengthen apparatus of internal security. So the measures for police and military reforms were taken, and for military reforms, following decisions creating a better balance between the Indian and the European soldiers, keeping arsenal under the control of the British officers, and dividing the regiments on the basis of the caste and region were taken. Last but not the least, the policy of divide and rule was adopted in order to make the British rule permanent, thus to make the British rule perpetual, or to perpetuate, or to a better word, to perpetuate the British rule. Even this can work, but I am using the appropriate term, the perpetuate the British rule. The British rule को अस्थायी बनाने के लिए. Okay. Thus, the efforts were made to divide Hindus and Muslims. In this way, the Great Revolt of 1857 became a watershed in the conduct of British policy towards India. Very good. My students, this part is over, and tomorrow I have to start part 3rd. But before that, I will give 10 minutes on you people in place of the question. Tomorrow I will not bring the question. Tomorrow I will simply 10 minutes I will spend over making my scheme clear. Even you people have any confusion, you can ask me the question. So tomorrow I will do the question answer session, and then question answer session means कि not कि मतलब I will make you clear कि history of 18th century is over, history of colonialism is over. Once again, whether did British credit should be given for modernization of India or not, I will discuss all these aspects with you. Then we will enter into more nationalism, the part 3rd. So today that is over. I have sent you the study material. You will just go through the study material alone, that will not be clear, but today you will just work with me, that will be